Episode 10, Exercise Time. 5 minutes of gratitude.
You're listening to the very best podcast in the world on health, wealth, and happiness. Please remember to leave a review and share with all your friends and family. And here is your host, Lars Hilser.
Okay, we are ending week 2 with an exercise time. I really kind of hate this term, so we're going to have to think of something different. Write feedback to the very best podcast in the world at gmail.com. If you have ideas, credit where credit's due. You will, of course, receive adequate credit for bringing up ideas that could replace this rather boring, homeworkish sounding name. Welcome, though, to the 10th episode of the very best podcast in the world. And today we're going to practice 5 minutes of gratitude. It's the weekend, so you'll have plenty of time. Clear your schedule, because this is going to take all weekend long to learn how to be grateful. Of course, I'm just shitting you, because I think what a lot of us in the Western world forget easily is to be grateful, and for quite normal things. Now, just this week, I was having a debate with one of my neighbors about how well we are doing in the Western world, in Europe, in the United States, and large parts of the quote-unquote not emerging markets, the established markets, for lack of better words. In that, we were arguing about really the small things that make it count, because the person I was talking to was quite a distant neighbor, if you will. But they were complaining about that they couldn't go on vacation due to COVID, and that life was so inhibiting, and that they hate their lives because they're not making enough money while living in a house that is, I don't know, by all standards, luxurious. It's not a villa or anything, but they've got a roof over their head, and it's a large, decent house, and it's well furnished, and it's warm, and it's got electricity, and it's got running water, and it's got sewage treatment, and all of the good stuff, you know. And I kind of have a hard time to fathom how you could seriously complain being in a situation like that. In fact, I think on Monday, I'm going to dedicate an episode to telling you about some of the quote-unquote shitholes that I have lived in and the misery I have seen there, to put into context of how well we are actually doing, at least most of us, I hope. That being said, let's get back to the program. 5 minutes of episode, 5 minutes of gratitude, of course, is the name of this episode. And what do I mean by that, particularly in a context to it being an exercise? Now, being grateful is something that we're not really used to. We take a lot of the luxury that we have for granted. One of the prime examples, for instance, in Germany, where I live, is that there is a law, and by this law, you have to have an ambulance at your doorstep within 12 minutes, because that's kind of like the risky time, the most damaging time of a heart attack. After that time, you can't recover. So a law was instated by which the local authorities had to build very sophisticated and expensive emergency plans to ensure that every household within their jurisdiction has an ambulance at the doorstep within 12 minutes. Now, it doesn't always work out, but it's nice in context to probably one of the experiences I've had in another country I will mention in the episode on Monday. So I'm kind of psyched and looking forward to all of the stuff that's going through my head right now. So what is it really that you can be and you should be grateful for? And that's really difficult to sometimes wrap your head around because you take so many things for granted. And the reason I kind of developed this particular episode was one thing that I heard in a YouTube video that I saw, which was making the point that you should be grateful when you leave the house, or you could be grateful for the fact that when you leave your house that you didn't forget your house keys and you're not locked out, right? Think of it. This is so normal. This is so every day. This is so, this isn't something that you don't even think about, right? You take your key, you take your phone, you take your wallet, you take, all your essentials, you put them on yourselves. But it's not really that normal. There are a lot of people who are quite forgetful and who might forget their keys and don't know where they put them, or they're misplaced their wallet, or, the phone is easy. You can call yourself, or, wait until a friend calls you. Lucky you if you have friends that call you frequently. But seriously though, I was kind of, perplexed by the idea that I could actually be grateful for something that simple. However, giving a little bit of thought to it, you're like, wait, okay, this is actually something that I should be grateful for, despite the fact that it's actually, of course, something you think about, right? But there are a lot of people who have problems with that. That being said, 5 minutes of gratitude sounds quite easy, but it's another one of these exercises that you can easily, and you should easily do when you're kind of going to bed. Because instead of kind of working on problems that you have, which is what a lot of people do, they, kind of chew on problems which they've had during the day, bad situations, and so on and so forth. Why not really make yourself think of the positive things that you could be grateful for? Number one, of course, being something as fucking simple as that you got the gift of waking up the morning before you're going to bed now. That's nothing you can take for granted. When do most people die well, not most, but a lot of people die in their sleep for stupid reasons, right? And that's something to be grateful for. We had the thing with not forgetting your key when you leave the house. So really a lot of things you can take for granted. What the effect is of practicing these 5 minutes of gratitude before you go to bed. And I hope you're one of the people that don't immediately fall asleep, because then you probably have only about a minute or two. Like my better half, she goes into the horizontal position, she's gone, right? But if you're one of the more normal people, not as blessed with a healthy sleep rhythm or healthy falling asleep methodology, then this is a great idea, because what it does, if you think about the positive things that you can be grateful for, it kind of takes, and if you not force yourself, that's too much of a negative word, but if you replace the negative things that you would think about while falling asleep with positive things, you start to replace them permanently. You ban the negative things out of your going to sleep process, replacing them with positive things, which inevitably will have a positive effect on your entire night's sleep. Wake you, when you wake up, you're going to feel much better because you've got a positive attitude. And when I kind of worked on this exercise, I tried it out myself for a couple of weeks, and I noticed that I was much more cheerful. I appreciated the sunrise, which was just fucking magnificent, much more because I knew that waking up wasn't something I could take for granted, but it was rather a chance that I was there to witness the sunrise through the dirty windows that had to be cleaned later on that day, right? But it was this smile on my face that kind of made me work this into an exercise, which I wanted to share with you. And I wanted to implore upon you, is that actually a word? I don't know. Try this out. When you go to sleep, try to force yourself, and I'm deliberately saying force yourself because at the first couple of days before it becomes a habit, it's rather difficult to continue with this process. You think of the things that you are actually grateful for, and these are things, and that's what I'm trying to emphasize here. A lot of these things could be things that you take for granted, right? And keep that in mind. It can be easy shit like that, like I just mentioned, but it can be that you can be grateful for the preparations you made for a test or a project which worked out. It's the weekend. Reflect on the week. Look for the things you're grateful for. And when you go to bed on this weekend and you're not too hammered or whatever, try and think of these things. Put a note on your bedside table to remind you of these 5 minutes of gratitude before you go to bed, and you will see the results rather quickly. And this procedure, these 5 minutes of gratitude, will become a very good habit and will be quite impactful on your life very shortly. Now, this exercise has bonus points. There is another thing that I added, which is a gratitude journal. And by that, it's an empty notebook. And if you don't have a spouse or whomever laying beside you, turn on the bed light. And when you have completed your contemplation of the things you're grateful for, write them down to reflect on them on the next day. And eventually you'll start to notice that it becomes almost like a self-initiating process. And again, I was amazed at the results that it had on my life, and made me grateful even for things that I took for very granted, which was, for instance, this gorgeous sunrise that I saw that one morning. In this sense, I will get cracking at the episode for Monday, which I'm looking for a cool title for, but I will think of something. And looking at some of the people and situations in the world that I have seen that are a lot less fortunate than a lot of us. And in that sense, I wish you a happy weekend, good practicing of the 5 minutes of gratitude. Remember to put down that sheet of paper with 5 minutes of gratitude on it. On your bedside table, if you have an old journal, tear out the pages you've already written in and write down the things you're grateful for. And if you have any questions or feedback, as always, please send them to the very best podcast at the world at, no, sorry, wrong, strike that, the very best podcast in the world at gmail.com. Okay, I'm off. Happy weekend. Good practicing of gratitude. I shall see you on Monday with another psych episode of the very best podcast in the world.